Good evening, everyone. It is the day. It is our first live discussion for 2023. It feels like we haven't chatted in a really long time. And it's really only been a month, I think. I'm not quite sure. Because our last one was in November, right? I think so. So it's just me starting out today. Laura will be with us shortly. I think she just popped in, so we'll get her in here in a jiffy. But yeah, as you pop on in, say hello and let us know that you're here. And if you have read our book that we're talking about today, which is Lauren WIllig's That Summer. I see we have cool gamers stop by. Hello. Andy is here. Hello. How are you feeling today? I hope you're doing okay. I know this winter, it seems like either you're sick or you're gonna be sick. Everyone is just feeling that time. So let us know how you're doing, Andy. And we're gonna pop Laura in here. There we go. Howdy
Hi.
do.
Hi, sorry.
No worries. Okay, so that summer, before we kind of hop into our live stream like we typically do, let's just remind everybody about our February read, which if you are part of our Voxer group, you know this already, but we were going to do our new product release last week, and I was not feeling up to it. So we ended up canceling that, and that's when we would have announced the book. But Laura announced in our Voxer group that you guys all selected The Kitchen God's Wife by Amy Tan. So that is what we'll be reading in February. And if you are not in the Voxer group and you want to be in the Voxer group, please do let me know. We can go ahead and add you. You can be added at any time. And there's no, you don't have to talk a lot in there or at all. So you just have to let us know and we'll add you. But yeah, Laura, have you read anything by Amy Tan?
Yeah, I did read The Joy Luck Club when that came out in 93 or 94, whenever that was. I was still in high school at the time, so it was my first really big Asian writer that I had read at that point. I was I don't know, 14 or something, It was so good. I just absolutely loved it. And I've been meaning to read more of her stuff ever since then, and it just keeps falling off my list. I mean, I'd purchased books before and then I got rid of them. I thought, I'll always look for these books. It's fine. I can let these go. So I just thought, yeah, it's time. I'm overdue to read more Amy Tan. And last year too, there was something on PBS. It was like a hour and a half story all about her life and everything that was so fascinating. So I really was like, man, I really want to read her. So I'm really excited that this was very much the winner. So yeah, how about you? Have you read before?
I have not.
Okay.
I actually so she's an instant buy for me. So anytime I see her, I always buy her books, even though I have not read any of them. And the thing is, I thought I had read her, but really what had happened is when the Joy Luck Club movie came out, I was a kid, but I saw it somehow. Maybe it was on TV or something, and it was so compelling to me even as a child that for some reason I thought I had read it.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, whenever I saw her books, I'm like, oh, these are so good. I should get them so that I can read them because Joy Luck Club was so good. And then I realized when I finally found Joy Luck Club, and I looked at the cover and I was like, this is not ringing any bells at all. Then I realized I actually haven't read anything by her. And yes, you were actually at my house. I think we watched that documentary together.
That's right. After I said it, I was like, wait, we were together.
I think it was on Netflix or something.
Maybe, yeah.
Or maybe it was on PBS. We just happened to have it on. But that, yes, was so good. It was so good. It looks like Andy is doing well. Thank you. I am too. I'm doing good. Kim is here, and that's okay. If you're okay with it being spoiled for you, because we will obviously have spoilers, then you are in the right place. So we're glad to have you, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
I guess she is. I mean, I would assume so, considering what I have heard.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness, you have read 6. That's amazing. That's amazing. I kind of wish that's where I'd be at this point, because I think I have 6 of her books.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and Allie's here. Hello,
Oh,
hello. Too funny. Okay. So that is going to be our February read. And next week, so right away next week, the 7th, we'll have our new product release at 8. And then at 8:30, we'll have the reading sprints. And we will most likely, Laura and I, start the book then.
Mm-hmm.
I will have to read it via audio because I do not actually have that book in my collection. I have like many others, but not that one. But I did find it on Hoopla, but only in the audio version. I was hoping to find it in ebook, but it was only audio. There's actually 2 different copies on audio in Hoopla, which is weird. So I don't know what the difference is. But if you have Hoopla and you're looking for a copy, it's only audio. So I'm sure there may be other places that you can get it that is in a different format. But like I said, tonight we'll be discussing our January read, which is Lauren WIllig's That Summer. I listened to that also in audio. Laura, were you able to complete the read, or did it not go well for you today?
Today was a real bad day, and I meant to finish, so I have not finished the book, and I'm totally okay with being spoiled for whatever. That's totally fine. I will forget by tomorrow, I'm sure. So I really have not read anything else since I read it in the initial reading sprints at the beginning of this month. Just briefly, for those of you who are here, my one remaining cousin unexpectedly passed away a little over 2 weeks ago, and it's been a big scramble, and I have it's only family. It's me and my mom left, so I am the person that's going to be in charge of his estate, and it has been exhausting and so much, and yeah, it's been really hard. So my whole life has been dealing with that stuff, and today I thought I was supposed to have the whole day at home to read this book, and I was so looking forward to it, and then I just was running around and on the phone all day long. So I apologize, but I am fine with being spoiled and happy to be here. Sorry I was late too. I was like, wait, what time is it? Oh my god, I gotta go. Yeah, it's not been a good day, but that's okay.
Yes, and no worries, no apologies. Obviously family comes first and things like that come first, so we're not worried about it. And we appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So it looks like Scribd has the audio as well. Yes.
Oh, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Allie. Yeah.
So, but I mean, for the most part, Laura, you've read Willig before. And what I will say before we start the discussion is a lot of what happens in this book is very reminiscent to what we saw in the Pink Carnation series, just kind of how things develop and how things end. And it's very reminiscent of that. So I think you'll be okay.
That's kind of the vibe I was getting from how I got. I thought this feels really familiar to me, and not in a bad way by any means, but I think I pretty much can tell how this is going to go.
Yeah. I don't know about anybody else, but because I read it so early in the month, and I think Allie could probably attest to this as well, I had to re-listen to my comments in Voxer because I'm like, I can't even really remember anything other than the main things that happened. And I'm like, oh, am I going to be able to discuss this book? Because I read it we had our sprints like on like the first week of January, and then I read it over the weekend of that same week, I think. And then obviously I've read a bunch of books since then. And yeah, so I had to re-listen to my thoughts. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. For anybody that's here and is interested, I'm actually going to be doing reading sprints on my channel, Spinelli Speaks, tonight at 10. So 2 hours from now. They're like midnight sprints to cram any books that you want to get read for the rest of the month. I don't need to cram anything in, but I'm sure there may be other people. But I thought it would be fun to do some midnight reading sprints because I've been up a little bit late lately reading. So I was like, oh, might as well have everyone join me. So if you're interested, you can pop over to Spinelli Speaks channel at 10. And I'll be reading until midnight or later. It just depends on how tired I am and if anybody's there. So anyways, small little plug. But let's go ahead and jump into the discussion of that summer. And we always start out with our rankings. So I don't know if you would rank it at this point yet, Laura, but everyone in the comments who has read it and wants to rate it, if you were to rate the book Goodreads style, 1 out of 5, 5 being amazing, what would you rate this book?
It's too early for me to tell, but I'm going to go on a limb and give it like a 3.5. But depending on how it ends exactly, I think I might bump it to 4, like just for that sake. So it'll probably be a 3 at the very least. So a 3 or a 4 for Goodreads, I'm guessing. What do you think? What did you think? What did you give it?
So in my previous thoughts that I listened to on Voxer, I gave it a 4. And I even said to myself in that message, I'm giving it a 4. And at first I thought I would give it a 3, but then compared to the other books I've read so far this month, it was more of a 4. But now that like it's been a little while, I can't remember anything really. It's like kind of like a forgettable kind of read.
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I really don't know if I feel like, and you and I were talking about this with the buddy read that we're doing right now. Like I ranked those books 3, but now after thinking about it for a while, I'm like, maybe they're really 2s. And it makes you think like, okay, so rating books, do you like have to go back like a month afterwards and be like, is this really a 4? Is this really a 3? Because are you just getting that like adrenaline rush when you're done with a book being like, that's 5 stars, and then like 3 days later you're like, really, it was more like a 3, like. So I think if I were to rate it, I'd probably give it a 3.5 because it's not a bad book. It's not bad, but I don't know if it's really a 4. I don't know if I can consciously give it a 4-star review. So yeah, I think I would agree with your first call there and say a 3.5. So Annie gives it a 4. And Allie gives it between a 3 and a 4. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're all in the same boat here. It seems like it's in that 3 to 4 range, but more towards a 4. When I have a hard time remembering books, it makes me feel like the rating needs to be lower.
Yeah.
I don't know why I think that way, but it just feels right. Like if I can't remember the book, then it gets a lower rating. Yeah. And you really do have to rate in the moment. I never wait to rate. I just rate it right away because otherwise I forget about it and then it gets a terrible rating, which I don't think is fair to the book. But if you really can't remember a lot of the book, then I think there's something there. Like when we read East of Eden, like that book is ginormous, but I remember like almost all of it because it was so good.
Yeah, I remember a lot of that too.
Yeah.
That was like,
what I mean, like
100 books ago.
Yeah.
I still remember.
Allie was listening to a podcast.
Oh.
Yeah. That's a good idea. That is good. It is, yeah. I like that too.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like it.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that probably overall it's probably in the high, like leaning more into the 4.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give it past the 4 though, especially because like all of her books feel very the same.
Yeah.
And not to compare them, but I mean, is that not part of it? Like your writing is kind of samey. So yes. And you remember that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. I would consider rereading it, but I think if I were to reread it, I think I would listen to it because just get a different kind of feeling from it. And like I really like and they sometimes do this with classics like this, is where it's more like dramatic, like a dramatized audiobook. I really like those. So if I were to reread it, I think I would listen to it. I would not reread Grapes of Wrath. That was terrible. It was so bad. No, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our number 1 question for our reading here. So we have, what do you think about the dual timeline? Do you prefer one story over the other? So for those of us who may not have read it, but you're joining us tonight, Willig's very, very commonly writes in dual timelines. Every book that I've read of hers so far is a dual timeline, meaning you'll have one almost like historical timelines. There's always lines up with some kind of historical event. And then a present day timeline, and somehow they intersect, or they the present day timeline is trying to figure something out. It's like a mystery that you gain all the information from the previous timeline. So this one is very much the same. We have character Imogen, who's the main character in the past timeline, and I believe it's like the early 40s or something. Do you remember? Or no, 18 something.
It's 18 something. Yeah.
It's when the Raphaelites were painting. So 1850s, I think it was.
It's something. Hang on.
And then we have Julia, who is in present day, and it's like 2003, 2004.
Okay, so the past is in 1839 is when it starts.
Okay.
I don't know what jumps to, and then the like present time is 2009.
2009. Okay.
I think. I'm looking.
That's okay. So that's what this is for this book. For me, the first part of this question, I really like dual timelines. I think it helps because if you're in one timeline and you're kind of like, this is getting boring or nothing's really happening, it's nice when it flips to another timeline and then you get that story. But then it's kind of like a double-edged sword, because if you're really enjoying one timeline and then it jumps to the other timeline, you're like, no, I wanted to know what happened with that person. Which comes to the answer for the second part of this question, which, did I prefer one story over the other? And hands down, I preferred Imogen's timeline way more than Julia's. I felt like Julia's timeline was very much an afterthought in the book. Like, I don't even feel like it was necessary. I mean, it pushed stuff along in the past timeline, but it just, to me, I didn't really care for it. I was more interested in what was happening in the past. So I definitely enjoyed Imogen's much more. That's what I have to say about that. Yeah. How do you feel so far about what you have read?
Yeah, I agree with you. I usually enjoy the past better in general. And just to correct what I said before too, like the first 2 chapters in the past are in 1839. It jumps to 1849 then. So that stays like right before 1850.
Okay.
In the past. But minor detail. But yeah, I do like the past story more. It feels to me like Yeah, the past, I could have a whole book about that and that would be just fine. And the new stuff, like the current day, present day stuff, is just fine too. But it's sort of like, it feels like a very predictable chick lit kind of a book that is like, it's fairly well, but like kind of pushed and woven in between to like you said, make the storyline in the past come along. It just feels a little more stark in this book versus when we read her Pink Carnation series. This seems more like there's really a difference between 2009, and that seems very predictable, very, and the past, which I have no idea where this is going to go yet exactly. I think I know some stuff, but like I really don't know. So yeah, I would agree. I like the past more, but I do like these a lot too.
Yeah.
Like Anna Kersley does a lot of books. I think maybe all her books are like this, and they're so readable. I mean, just they just zip along, and they're all chunky books too, but it doesn't feel like a chunky book necessarily. So yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I agree. And I had mentioned that a little bit in my Voxer message about Julia's timeline, feeling like there's a lot missing, and it just feels like it's a setup more than a complete story. And I think because I know what Willig can do with a storyline like that, because we read 12 books of Pink Carnation, it feels like it was like the beginning of someone's story, so it didn't really complete itself in this book. So because it's a standalone, it felt very unfinished when it came to that storyline.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, because I don't physically have the book, I wouldn't be able to measure it, but I wonder how many pages were actually Imogen pages and how many pages were Julia pages, because I feel like it was significantly unbalanced and it was more Imogen than it was Julia, which I'm fine with, but like,
yeah,
that also made me kind of feel like her storyline was kind of like moot in certain aspects, other than giving like little details that helped you understand the past a little bit more. So it looks like overall we have the same thought here in the comments.
Okay.
And I agree with Allie here with the dual timelines having that, like, you kind of prefer one over the other. But I think that always happens because in your head, I think it's always really easy to compare when you have two things side by side instead of just reading them equally. I think your mind just automatically tries to think of one which is not so much better, but just a preference. Yeah, I don't know. Because I'm thinking about all the dual timeline books that I'm reading, or that I've read, excuse me. And I think I always have a preference of like a character. So that makes me then enjoy their timeline better, I guess, is what it is. So maybe not so much the timeline, but the characters. Because you always have a character that you really enjoy. So maybe that's what it is too, is maybe it's not just the timeline, it's the characters that are within that timeline. It looks like Andy enjoyed Imogen's much more as well. So, okay, cool.
Maybe for me, because I'm still like just a third in, it feels like we're doing a lot more in the past, and the present feels a little more like smushed in, just because we don't have to establish 2009, that's really recent, but we do have to establish a lot more of the 1840s because that's a lot more in the past, and like we need reminders, whether overtly or just by example, of like society's rules and like lighting and displaying the house thing and traveling and all that stuff. Like you need that refresher and that reestablishment or establishment if you never read it before. So it makes sense for me, at least where I'm at now, that there'd be a lot more spent in the past just to get that kind of settled and rolling.
Maybe.
But yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't feel like there's a lot of present, but it could just be like I don't remember most of it because it was pointless.
Like a whole month it went out practically.
Yeah. Allie has a question here. The Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. She said that's an example where, I mean, you could just trash the whole modern day and you wouldn't, no detriment to the book.
I've heard other people say that too about Great Circle, that like, what was the point of the present day stuff? Just like forget.
Yeah. Sure. Ooh, a Leanne Moriarty. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up, like two modern day timelines. that always, like, I've only read I think maybe 1 or 2 books that are like that, but it always, like, messes with my head because I have to, like, remember, like, wait a minute, this one's only 2 years before this one. So are they going to come together? Or, like, it always makes me, like, really confused when I'm going back and forth. So I'm like, wait a minute, what? But I love Leanne Moriarty. I have not yet read this one. This one is newer. I think this just recently came out like 2 years ago or something like that. But yeah, that's on my radar. So I love her. She does an excellent job. I love her books. But yeah, okay. Okay, let's jump to number 2. So this has to do with Imogen's timeline. And we know that she falls in love with Gavin, who is one of the artists that come to the house. And do we feel like this is a good thing? Obviously, it's the whole premise of the book, really, in her timeline. But is it not still adultery? Like, how do we feel about the fact that, like, we're reading a book and are we rooting for them? Are we, like, happy about this? Because, it's adultery. She's married and she's having an affair with the artist. So, like, how do we feel about that?
I don't know.
Let us know.
I know it's starting, like, their affair is just about to start where I left off. And, like, I know if that's going to happen. But I feel like, from what I know, again, of the book form, where at this point, maybe I should just not be talking. But, like, it's not really a marriage. Like, he's kind of a schmuck. Her husband is a jerk. So, like, girl, get it where you can. Like, if you can find happiness, like, more power to you. You know, it is still adultery, but, like, what a crappy life she has so far. It's so, like, she's so oppressed and so, like, treated like crap. And again, this is just from where I'm looking at now, but it's just like, yeah, I'm fine with it. Like, whatever, girl. Be happy somewhere, please, for once. Like, marriage. No.
Yeah. Andy says kind of a similar thing. Hubby was a bum.
Yeah.
So I struggle with this one because it's such a common thread in so many books, like, especially in, like, historical fiction,
Yeah,
or, like, historical romance, where it's a marriage of convenience, so blah blah blah. Lady Chatterley's lover. That's probably the first instance where this was brought to the forefront of, like, this happens. But in that case, it is. It happens. It happened back then significantly more, I think, than it happens now. It happens a lot now. But I think because marriages were based on wealth and position and who's the eldest and all, and who owns land, I think that, not that it was still frowned upon, obviously, but I think people were just like, yep, like, her husband's 28 years older than her, so she should really be more cautious. So because of that, it didn't really bother me as much, because I know that was just a way of life.
Mm-hmm.
And because of, I felt more bad for her, because she went into the marriage believing it was love,
Right.
And believing that it was going to be like a fairy tale, and they were going to work together, and it was going to be, not that they would be equals, but she really felt like he listened to her, and that he thought she was intelligent, and that she was going to be able to utilize all the things that her father taught her to be able to work side by side with her companion. And none of that happened. Like, it was like a switch flipped. And later in the book, when you find out, there's like a very small snippet of them seeing him come out of a brothel known for having young women. It all makes sense that he's obviously a pedophile and like really just really likes young girls. So the fact that she was 16 when they got married, and obviously at that age you're mesmerized by older men who are seemingly, you know, more intelligent and say nice things to you. It makes sense. So as she grew and was, you know, because it was like what, she had been married 10 or some odd years to him, and in all of that time really wasn't shown all of the fantastical things that she thought was going to happen in a marriage, that it only really makes sense that when someone of her age appears, that it kind of just happened. And you know, it was pretty predictable how it went down. Like first they didn't like each other. They thought, you know, she's all hoity-toity, he's a vagabond, you know, all that kind of thing. And then it just, obviously we know what happens in the end. But so yeah, I mean, usually I'm pretty perturbed by these kind of things. So I'm just like, why? But because it's so common in this time era, it's not, I mean, marriage isn't what we know of marriage now. Marriage back then was really more of a, like a positional thing. Like it just is like, you two are supposed to be together and then create offspring. But what you do in your own time is, you know, of your own choosing. So it's a really long explanation, but it's hard to like feel so like dead set on something, but then also be okay with it. So it's hard to explain. But anywho, listen to Andy and Bridges of Madison County. You rooted for the affair.
Me too.
Oh my gosh, I have not read that. I do own it, but I have not read that.
Oh, you'll read it in like a couple hours. It's so fast.
Yeah, I could just watch the movie, but I haven't done that either. Oh, absolutely. No, I'm not saying that they aren't. I don't think they're right, but I mean, I think people make them too okay. I don't like the excuses like, oh, well, he's unhappy. Okay, well then get a divorce and then be with that person. Like, it just bothers me. But anywho, we don't have to sit and talk about that. Oh, good. I'm glad it's coming back to you now. I thought it was a boys at the place he went. Must have made that up. No, I'm pretty sure that it was known for young lady, like young women. Because I think she brings it up, Imogen brings it up later in the book when she is thinking back to when she got married, like why he was so interested in her. I think that's where she's like, makes the connection of like why he was at the brothel or whatever. Pretty sure. But it could be that it was boys too. I mean, I listened to it on audio, so I could have misheard it. But yeah, so as far as, oops, I'm losing my spot here. But yeah, as far as the rooting for, I guess I feel good for the sense that like she's feeling good, and I liked Gavin. I thought she was actually going to be with a different artist. I didn't think it was going to be him. I thought it was going to be Rossetti for some reason. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And then
I thought the same thing too, just because like we know of Rossetti, like that name is more well known. I thought, oh, that's how she's going to hook in with the past a little more.
Yeah, exactly.
Gavin, yeah, but yeah.
Yes, Allie, absolutely. When I said that, I was referring to people right now, like in in this timeline. But yeah, no, there is no escape. No, and that's why what I was saying before about how it was just more common, because once you got married, that's it. So if you didn't like what you had, people, it was kind of accepted, but not like public, that you just moved on. Mm-hmm. So it is hard to judge in a modern day lens. Absolutely. I remember something about, I can't remember where I learned it or where I heard it, but like, I don't want to misspeak because I don't want to like offend anybody, but like, I can't remember exactly, but it was like, it was okay for men to go out and like prostitution or mistresses or whatever, but if a wife did it, it was just like,
that's the worst.
That was terms for
right.
Like, exile and stuff like that. I can't remember in what context I had heard that, but I mean, from when I was a young adult, I heard that somewhere.
Yeah. And like, then abuse is okay because then she's straying and she's a terrible wife. So you have to put her in a place by like keeping her there however you can, making sure so like hitting is fine, abusing is fine, whatever you want to do. It's your call, mister. Like, she's your wife. You have to keep her somehow. So use your imagination. It's like, oh, great.
Right. Well, but women were considered property.
Oh, absolutely.
For a really long time. I mean, it was better for a woman to stay single than it was for her to get married. Because if she got married, then she became a piece of property. Whereas if she stayed single, she actually had ownership of herself. So.
Right. But then you can't be single either because that's frowned upon as well. Old maid and,
Yeah.
Can't
old
have a job.
At like 25 or something, whatever age it was.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, I'm super.
Okay, let's move on. So let's jump over to Julia's timeline. So Julia, if we remember, she used to live in England, and then her mother passed away in a car accident, and after that, her father immediately moved Julia to New York, and that's where they had been living ever since. And a lot of her past, she doesn't really recall much of it, as she was younger when this happened. But then a relative passes away, and she inherits the home. And so she goes to England to basically take possession and basically try to sell the home. In doing so, she starts to remember more. She starts to remember the incident itself. But all in all, when you think of Julia's story, do you feel like her story is complete by the end of the novel? Since you can't really speak to that too much, I'll just go ahead and give my thoughts here. And if in the comments you want to put your thoughts in as well. So Julia's timeline for me, and I kind of mentioned already, is kind of lackluster. Like, I feel like it's only there to give foreshadowing or to provide like little clues to follow in the historical timeline. So I really didn't feel anything for Julia. Like, when she was remembering things, I was just like, okay, can we get through this so that we can get to the Imogen stuff? I mean, I can appreciate what WIllig was doing as far as this being a book about her kind of coming to terms with what happened to her mother. In Imogen's timeline, we obviously have some motherly kind of themes. So I can appreciate that. But I think by the time you get to the end of the book, her timeline just feels so incomplete. There's not a lot happening, and what is happening feels very forced. for instance, there's a love interest that she has with this person called Nick, who is basically an art dealer of some sort. And it's very, I feel forced. Like, I don't feel it's very authentic. And it just reminds me very much of the very first book of Pink Carnation, of how the two present day timeline people meet and kind of not like each other in the beginning and then all of a sudden like each other at the end. And like Allie says, the very last line, which I can't remember, but it's so corny. It's like the corniest corny. Yeah, can you read the line for us? Because it's terrible. It's so bad.
Okay.
Did you just read it?
Yeah.
Okay, read it out loud.
Okay, so I'm going to read the last 3 sentences, just the last little paragraph. It's, okay. Nick smoothed the hair away from her face. There was a roguish glint in his blue-green eyes. And here's the last line. Didn't I promise to inspect your artwork? No, thank you.
It's terrible. It's so terrible. It's like...
That makes me uncomfortable. I don't even know how they get there. I just make me uncomfortable.
So I think to myself, like, so I have a master's degree in English, and in one of my classes, we had to peer review each other's writing. And I feel like Lauren WIllig would have never gotten through my class unscathed from the amount of terrible comments she would have gotten on these lines that she has. They're so corny and so cheesy. And sometimes like, oh, you like corny and cheesy, not this corny and cheesy. Like, that was like the worst. I was like, is this your first book? Like, it's terrible. It seems really off.
Like, it doesn't fit with it. Like, and okay, we keep talking about Pink Carnation, everybody. I'm sorry, but like, there are little like cheeky lines in there too, but it's not that tone shift like this is from how I think the rest of this book is from what I know. It just seems like, oh, you just went into a whole different thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
There's cheeky and then there's barfy. Like,
yeah.
No.
So I just feel like her timeline it's not very good. And I don't really know that it's even needed. Like, I don't think there's anything in that timeline that really promotes anything in the other timeline. I don't know, because I feel like you could just write any of that in. You could have just written a historical fiction and it would have been just fine, because it's a drama. It's traumatic and whatnot. It's not meant to be like one of those love stories that is happy. I mean, not all love stories have to be happy. But yeah, I was not a big fan of that one. So, yes, Allie, the cheese was terrible. So terrible. It was not Gouda.
No, it was not Gouda.
The modern day time unraveled to a dime store romance. Yeah, it wasn't very good. Okay, let's move on from that. Let's just call it a day. So we mentioned feeling that the book is reminiscent of Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. Do you think this is intentional? So when I say we mentioned, in our Voxer group and in our initial reading sprints, a lot of us had feelings of the comparison between Rebecca and this book because of the character Jane, who is the sister-in-law of Arthur, who is Imogen's husband. She kind of acts as a housemaid, not maid, but like she kind of runs the household like a housekeeper. And she's very rude and disloyal to Imogen. She's very loyal to Arthur, and it's mentioned a few times that like she's in love with him and basically does his bidding and whatnot. So it's very reminiscent of Mrs. Danvers. Is Is it Danvers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Rebecca. So how do we feel like that? How do we feel about that? And do we feel like it's intentional? Do we feel like it's kind of a purposeful addition? Is she pulling from that to kind of give us a little foreshadowing to what the end is going to be like? Or do we think it's just kind of a coincidence?
I know. I think it's intentional, just based on the beginning, when the first time we meet Jane, because like her at the top of the stairs and that whole interaction and everything, I was like, oh man, did you just pick up Demoria and be like, oh, cross out this and write in Jane? Like, it seems so intentional. Like, in my brain, as I remember a lot of Rebecca reading it just seemed like the same scene, the same thing. I thought this has got to be the biggest coincidence, or it's way intentional. And I can't speak for anything else, but like that first thing, I was like, oh yeah, there we go. Yeah. Rebecca.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think?
I think it's very intentional. I think there's a couple of scenes that make it feel like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's because I've seen both versions of Rebecca, that I feel like in the book there is a moment where Jane is like trying to dress her or something. But now I feel like maybe I'm just remembering the costume party in Rebecca. I don't know. Anywho, I definitely feel like Jane is Mrs. Danvers, like hardcore, like creepy. I feel like she's always lurking around some corner.
Like, she's a lurker.
Yeah, I feel like she's scary. And I have my predictions on that we can talk about in later questions. But I definitely feel it was intentional. I feel like because of the way that this is written, I feel like Willig really depends on foreshadowing and depends on the reader picking up on hints. So I think by having this, not a retelling, I wouldn't consider it a retelling. It's more of just like a nod to Demorie's writing, that it's very much like that same kind of creepy housekeeper, whose side is she on kind of thing. Yes, I think you are talking yourself out of it being well balanced, because I would have to disagree with you there. I don't think it's well balanced. Yes, the mystery elements in both timelines. And I will say Willig does a good job of that in most of her books. She always has some kind of element of mystery. Like, you don't really know what's happening until it happens, or it's left to be ambiguous, which usually I hate ambiguity in books like this. But in this one, I was A-okay with it. It was pretty okay. I also think it's definitely intentional. Yes, and yes, you're so right. Yes, seeing the former wife, yes. And with the present day timeline, they keep looking at the portrait of Imogen. And they're trying to figure out who that is. So yes. I forgot about that. Yeah. So yeah, definitely something to think about as far as as the book unfolds, like the comparison. Now, as readers who haven't read Rebecca, I wonder how that feels, because I always think of that, like, not so much just on this book, but a lot of times when you're reading a book and maybe you're reading it with other people and then they mention like, oh, this is exactly like this, and you haven't read that, like, sometimes I feel like I want to know what I have to read first in order to get this. So it makes me always feel like that's why I read so many classics, because so many books since those classics have been written draw from them, that I want to be able to like pick out like, oh yeah, this is like that, you know? So man, I wonder how, I would have a hard time. I'd be like, oh, what's this Rebecca that everyone keeps talking about? Which I only just, when did I read Rebecca? It wasn't that long ago, like 3 years ago?
Yeah, maybe 3.
2020 maybe? 2019? 2020? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It was a while ago. I mean, it was recent, but a while ago. Okay. Well, let's move on. We're almost at an hour. Wow. This has just flown by. Let's see here. So Imogen and Gavin met. They meet very unfortunate ends. Yes, they do. What do we think of their deaths, and who do we think is responsible, if anyone?
Oh, I'm intrigued.
So they both die. Sorry, spoiler alert.
I figured that would eventually because it's 1849. So didn't think they were surviving now.
Yes. So unfortunately, spoiler alert. So Gavin and Imogen plan their escape, and they are going to board a boat to New York and basically disappear with their unborn child and get married and live happily ever after. And Gavin doesn't show. But Imogen isn't sure if he doesn't show or if she missed him, because she was supposed to watch out her window for a lantern light at midnight. But oddly enough, a little bit before midnight, Arthur comes into her room and wants to talk to her for 15 or 20 minutes, and is just talking to her and making sure she's okay because she went to bed sick. And so it was odd, but at the same time, whatever. So she doesn't know if she missed the lantern light and Gavin just left without her, or if something bad happened. And we don't find out what happens until present day, when they find his remains under the summer house. So they find his bones. And it looks as if the back of the skull is bashed in. So it's left pretty ambiguously of who did it. I think Jane did it. That's what I'm going to say. That's what I said in my Voxer message. I think it was Jane because of the Rebecca thing, because it's her, and because I think Imogen would assume it was Arthur because he's obviously bigger, more brute. He always had the cane with him, so did he bash him over the head with the cane? But I don't feel like Arthur does his own work. No. I feel like Arthur would incite someone else to do it. And like I said in my Voxer message, I feel like Jane knew about Gavin and Imogen the whole time. I think from the moment they started their affair, I think she knew, because she's always lurking around. And I'm sorry, but a woman in that time era, just going for walks and doing all these things by herself. Jane is a lurker. She probably saw them. She probably told Arthur super early on, hey, just so you know, she's boinking the artist. And he was probably so what? Hopefully she gets pregnant and then we can have an heir, I feel like he doesn't care, especially with his trips to the brothel. He was just sure, good. At least she's happy and she's out of my hair. But when Jane then told him, which I'm assuming she told him, because when they made their plan, there was someone in the bushes, because we know that there was something moved at the end of the scene or something. So we know someone was there. We just don't know who it was. I feel like it was Jane. She told Arthur, and Arthur said, you need to take care of it. And then he went and distracted Imogen during the time of which she is supposed to watch for the lantern light. Mm-hmm. And Jane went out there and bashed him over the head and stole the painting. I feel like that's the proof. He had the painting, the Tristan and Isolde painting, and she stole it, because later when Olivia, the daughter, finds the painting in her cupboard, it was Jane's cupboard that the painting was found. Why would she keep that? Why would she have it if Arthur's the one who killed him? So I think she killed him, took the painting because she saw that it had Arthur's face on it, hid it so that no one would know, and she then killed Imogen by poisoning her while she was like leading up to her pregnancy, because there's no reason why was she taking all these tonics with laudanum in them, because she said even when she would like try to spit it out she would feel better, but then Jane would make sure she was drinking it. I think she was slowly poisoning her so that she would die. So I think it was Jane. I think it was Jane the whole way through, so she could have Arthur all to herself and be a happy little family, because at his age he's not going to marry again. I think it was Jane. It was all Jane. Jane. I've been neglecting your comments and I'm sorry. Here we go. Okay, let's see here. Oh, this is back from when we were talking about dual timelines. So Easter eggs. You need to ensure how it works without having the book. Oh, yes. Yep. No, I agree. It should just be a bonus. You're right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. Yeah, shocked as in shocked that she died, because I didn't expect that. I really didn't expect that she was going to die. I thought she was just going to like live a very unfortunate life, but at least have her child. So yeah, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. I did not see that coming. Even more shocked about hubby and housekeeper. Yeah, I mean, I think it's Rebecca all over again, except she wins. The housekeeper wins. Yeah, I don't think they were healthy. I think they were definitely just slowly poisoning her, like weakening her system. And then, yeah, she just died in childbirth. And who would question that? Who would question her dying in childbirth? It was very common. Yeah. Ugh, crazy.
Right.
Yeah, and I thought about that. I did. But I feel like it was Jane. I don't feel like Arthur's the kind of guy to get his hands dirty. I really feel like he is a sleazeball that just would be like, knows Jane's in love with him, but she's old. She's not a 14-year-old. So go do this. But I would also, entertain the idea that he went out there, knocked the guy off, stole the painting, gave it to Jane as he was walking in the house, said, go hide this, walked up to the room all smug and were like, gonna sit here for 20 minutes talking to you and wondering, how are you doing, my love? Oh, is it 12:20? Okay, well, I'll go now. So I could see that too. But I think Jane did it just because I just don't think that he would do his own dirty work. I think he would make someone else do it just because he can talk anyone into anything because of his power that he has over everyone. Yeah, absolutely. Kim. Well, now you read it and you let me know who you think did it. I mean, because I'm giving you all the drama, all the good stuff.
That's really funny. Oh, Kim.
Uh-oh. I think I'm talking too loud because I think I just woke up the baby. Let's see if she puts herself back to sleep. We'll see. I might have to go in there. I think Jane. Oh, sorry, I gotta change this. I think Jane and Arthur might have concluded. Oh, well, that's a big one. I just can't see clobbering Gavin on the head. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, help bury him. Cause yeah, I think in the present day timeline, she mentions that like it had to have been a bigger person to be able to hide the body like that. So I will concede to the fact that it may have been Arthur, but I just want to believe that it was Jane because she just seems like the type. Yeah, I think it was definitely decent for sure. I think I have to go and help this baby fall back asleep. Let me see. The next question I had on here was, do you think the novel accomplished what it set out to do? And what was the purpose of the story? There's a whole other line of thought we could go along with it being compared to Tristan and Isolde. But unless you have read Tristan and Isolde, again, it's that nod to a classic. And this is a classic from when classics were, just being, these are like, what am I trying to say? Like, this really is like a Beowulf kind of classic. So if in the comments you want to talk about that, have you read Tristan and Isolde, Laura? Mm-hmm. Oh, it doesn't end well for Tristan and Isolde. I'm pretty sure Romeo and Juliet is a nod to Tristan and Isolde. Similar story. Mm-hmm. But I'm gonna go just help her for a minute. If you guys want to just chat about that, and I will. You're funny. I will be. She might have just laid back down. Oh, she might have just. I think I'm good. We're almost done here. I'll check on her when we're done. I think she's sleeping now, though.
I do the same thing, Allie. I wouldn't be like, oh, here, let me get a shovel. Like,
yeah.
No, call the cops.
Yes, and I think you mentioned that in your Voxer message too. Like, your first thought is to get the shovel. Like, if I found, because I think they find like a hand first or something. I could be like, oh my God, get me out of here. Mm-hmm. Gross. Especially for how old it was, it would literally just be the bones. Mm-hmm. Like, there would just be bones. Gross. Yeah. Yeah. So Tristan and Isolde, and forgive me because I probably won't remember most of it. It's literally, from what I recall, it is very similar to how Romeo and Juliet is set up, where the two lovers are not meant to be together as far as like family or position. And this is like medieval, like way earlier than Romeo and Juliet. But I think one of them gets imprisoned or something for a really long time, and they both end up dying. It's essentially, it's the same story as Romeo and Juliet from what I recall. But it's a very popular story, or it was a very popular story, because of the dedication of the two lovers. And that dedication is essentially their end. But I think by him painting that, and if you know the story as a reader, that is your immediate foreshadow to know that this is not going to end well. That it is going to end with someone not living. So as soon as they referenced that in that painting, I was like, oh, they're both dead. Like, this isn't gonna be good. It looks like Mary's here. Hello. Hello.
Lovely to see you too.
Yeah. Disturbing the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But I think knowing that it's based on, or not to say that it's based on that, but knowing that those Rebecca and Tristan Isolde kind of nods are in there, I think the book did what it meant to do as far as it being more of a drama than like a love story, because then she kind of has that love story in the modern day timeline. So I think she accomplished what she wanted to, is just a story about love and how it sometimes doesn't work out and sometimes it does. So that's okay. But like you said, if you didn't know the classic, it didn't bother you. Yeah. I just had a thought about something else and now I can't remember. Oh, I don't know. It's gone. So yeah, any additional topics that anyone would like to cover regarding the book, characters, plot, and or the story, let us know in the comments. But those are really all the questions I have for this read. The last thing that I thought of, and Allie and I think Allie and myself mentioned this in our comments on Voxer, but this book title and cover art are terrible for the story that is between the cover. Like, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's matched well. Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I don't feel like that to me says anything about the book itself.
This is bad lighting on my end. It's like a 20-watt bulb in front of me. But like the darkness of the blue seems a little fitting. But yeah, this seems like really bright, summery, like Cornwall love story. That's what I think of, like a beach love story. Just by the house alone and the colors and everything. It's a really sunny picture with a beautiful garden, this beautiful old house. But like, this is really dark. So that seems weird.
Yeah.
You know?
They're just not, it's just, to me, it doesn't feel right. Now, there's a different cover art that looks like a pink carnation cover art where it's a woman, but she has her back to you, obviously, but she's in more of the historical timeline clothing, and she's got like a shawl that's kind of like falling down a little bit. That to me is a better cover art than that, because I feel like the cover that's on the one that we read is very modern and calls more toward the modern day timeline, like that summer that I went to clear out the house and found this painting. But like, the book wasn't really about that. The book was really more about Imogen's timeline. So I just don't feel like it really matched well. And like I said in my message, I judge a book by its cover. I pick books to read based on their cover. I very rarely read the back of a book. So the cover and the title have to speak to me. I would never have picked this book on my own. Like, never would have read it. I was just been like, that sounds dumb. And the inside's pretty good. I mean, so they say don't judge a book by its cover. Well, I do, so I'm going to miss out on a lot of good reads if you're not going to have a proper title. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, based on reading so much of her stuff previously, like I bought this that summer before, and I was still collecting the Pink Carnation series, and just thought, oh, I like this writer, even though I hadn't read her yet. I was like, oh, I think I like her. I'm gonna buy everything that I see. had it for a long time, and it was her first standalone. She was writing this towards like the middle or end of when she was writing the Pink Carnation series, you know. And I have The English Wife, which is another one of hers that you have read and I have not. So I'm just like, yeah, I'm going to get all these. So I'll just go along with it, and that's fine. A cover does matter to me, but I'm more likely to have like see just a small image of the cover and I'm like reading about the book itself. So like that, the guts matter more than the cover, but I do look at some stuff sometimes and I'm like, this is horrible, but it sounds good, so I'll just get it. Like, whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't read the back of the books very often. And if I do, I read like one sentence because I don't feel like it. But I'm also the person that doesn't read any of like the additional notes or author's note or any of that crap either. So I'm like a really weird reader. Andy says she would not have picked it up either. But I'm glad we read it. I am very happy that we did actually select this book because it was a good read. I mean, it was. I mean, as much as we were like divisive on a few things, like it still was a good book. So yeah, 3.5, 4 stars. I think it deserves that. I definitely will continue to read Willig.
Yeah.
I do like her writing. I think a lot about the Pink Carnation series. I know you and I have talked about that a lot throughout reading this book. So for those of you who are considering reading that, like, I just want to like preface it with the first book is literally the worst one. When you compare
also dirtier than the other books too.
And it's super dirty.
Yeah, we were both like, whoa, okay.
We're like, hey. And then once you get past the first one, like, I don't know if an editor talked to her or something and said, like, you're kind of breaching here. But the rest of them are, I mean, there's steam, but it's not like the steam that was happening on that riverboat.
Oh, that was like, oh, okay.
Okay, it's going to be that kind of book.
Yeah.
But yes, I would highly recommend Pink Carnation series. Really My favorite book of all of them is the one with Turnip. So
it's that one, and then the one before it, like the Emerald, whatever. I think it was the third book. Like those two, I like a lot together. But yeah, Turnip was unexpectedly a good book. I thought this guy is so annoying because he seems like such a doofus, and he is a doofus. But it was really good.
Well, I think the best thing about the series was what happens in a lot of series is you get a lot of samey kind of stuff happening in each book. But because this was a series that had an end to it, like both timelines are coming to something, like something is bringing them to the end, every book felt different, and you had to read them so you could get to the end and figure out like what was gonna happen. And I think the characters that were matched up and in what order they were matched up was awesome.
Yeah,
I really did, because you just want it. You're like, I hope the next one is about this person, and you're like, it's not yet. And I know we like read the back of the books to figure out like who's going to be the next book. trying not to be spoiled.
There was and like maybe book 9 or 10 or something, we were hoping for a certain person. I don't remember who it was. And the next book wasn't hers. She was the one after that. We were like, should we just skip this in between when they go right to hers? Like, we talked about it quite a bit. Like, no, we really shouldn't. We didn't. But
oh yeah, because that was the one with the Duke that everyone called a vampire or whatever. And we were like, we just like flew through that book because we just wanted to get to the next one.
Yeah.
Where she, I'm not going to say it because it'll spoil, but yeah. The rodent is what I'm thinking about. Anywho, my goodness, we got to get off that topic. If you read Pink Carnation, let us know, because we would like to know your thoughts.
Yeah. And
if you read it and you're like, this was dumb, I can't believe you made me read this.
Sorry.
Then that's okay too.
Yeah.
Allie mentions if any of you have read Middlemarch, I think the early part and the lovelessness of the relationship between Imogen and Art did remind me of how Dorothea and, how would you say that? What's that?
Casaubon? Yeah.
Got together. Yeah.
I've read.
Go ahead.
No, I read parts of Middlemarch, but like not the whole thing. I was supposed to read the whole book in 3 or 4 days, but that thing is chunky and I had other classes. So I was like, not even Cliff Notes. I was like beginning, like around a middle chapter. And like, I just was like, here, I'll write an essay on this.
Yeah. I have heard good things about Middlemarch, and I don't know that I'm ready for it. Like, I was ready for East of Eden. Like, I knew that was going to be a chunkster, but like, I know that Middlemarch has a lot of just talking about the land. Like, I don't want to get into it. I might have to read that on an audiobook.
Yeah. So you can like 3.5 times it or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I feel like that's another one where there's a lot of references to that and other things. So I probably should read it. But yeah, I know you had mentioned that earlier on as well. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know if that's the same one. I think The English Wife is a title that is more than one book. I feel like there's another book that's called The English Wife by a different author as well. So
here's the cover for The English Wife by Lauren WIllig. For anyone, is it? This is, I mean, book of the month for me, but it came out in December of 2017.
Yeah, I listened to it on audio. Oh no, Kim, I'm sorry. I haven't noticed that we've been freezing. If we've been freezing, we sorry. Yeah, so many similarities. Okay. Yeah, I was getting Lady Chatterley's lover vibes from their whole affair.
Oh boy, do I have some Mellors-esque adventures outside to look forward to? Is that what you're telling me?
No, they're pretty clean about everything.
Okay.
There's no grabby, rapey scenes.
All right.
Yeah, you had to read it. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Good. There you go. You looked it up. You loomed it. Yeah, looked it up. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's all we have tonight. I mean, we're so happy you all are here and chatting about our book, and I think overall we all really liked it. I think it was a good read. Again, for all of you who may have missed the beginning, but February's read is The Kitchen God's Wife, which I'm excited to read. I'll be reading it in audio, which I'm kind of sad about because I do have a harder time being able to discuss books that I haven't physically seen the words of, just because it sticks in my head a little bit better, but it is what it is. So unless I find it at a thrift store sometime, which I haven't been doing a lot of thrift store shopping at all, it'll be an audiobook. So yeah. And then we'll start reading that next week, Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited.
Yeah.
It'll be good. It will be good. But yeah, like I said, on my solo channel, so on Spinelli Speaks, in about 40 minutes, I'll be starting reading sprints over there. So if anyone's trying to cram in any last pages before February hits us tomorrow, or you're just looking to read, or you can't sleep, or you want to hang out, we'll be over there. I'm not going to chat as much on there just because it's getting later, and obviously I'm right across the hall from where the baby sleeps. So I might do some more like silent chatty breaks. So like we'll have reading sprint, and then maybe like it'll be more just typing breaks like for chat, just because I don't want to wake the baby up. So it might be kind of like that. You'll just get typed messages from me. We'll see how it goes, but depends on who's in the chat. I might be in there by myself. But yeah, if you're interested, you can pop over there at 10 or in 40 minutes. If you're watching this in replay, you can certainly pop over to my channel and watch it in replay. But yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here tonight and chatting with us. As always, we had a good time. Yeah. Yes, you probably should do some actual work now.
Yeah.
It's like mid-morning for you at work.
Fine, Allie.
Yeah. Well, okie doke. We'll chat with you all next week.
Mhm.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.